Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of Eye of the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, Lore and FREY, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon, which I just spent all night working on. I'm so excited. It's so good, guys. So I just got done going through an interview from Toby Fox. I realized how easy it was to translate Japanese articles into English. So I was able to go on Famitsu.com and looked at a couple of Toby Fox related Famitsu articles. One which he wrote himself, which was complete garbage, by the way. It was him describing himself playing a shitty dating sim from the 90s. I can't imagine anybody would find that entertaining or funny or amusing. Famitsu's been going way downhill for a decade, and I think that's a very good example as to why, is that they're giving articles to Toby fucking Fox. But more interestingly, I think, was the interview with Yoko Shimomura, the composer of Live Alive and lots of my favorite Japanese RPGs. I know she worked on Mario and Luigi. I know she worked on Kingdom Hearts. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff I've played that she's worked on. But yeah, Shimomura, is the composer of like Megalomania, the song that Toby Fox ripped off for Megalomania. So I was kind of intrigued like what this interview would be like. I knew it would kind of touch on like certain sensitive topics, like what Fox's daily life in Japan is actually like. But I was kind of taken aback by some of the things that Fox was saying in this interview. And I found it very intriguing. So much so that like a certain aspect of it, I immediately posted to 4chan, and I think I will be continue doing going forward, in that like the reality of Toby Fox's presence in Japan is that he is a far-left, liberal infiltrator, SJW cuck, who's being pushed by the gaming establishment to try and make the culture more woke. And I think I'm certain of that at this point, because there was a certain line in here where like he makes a joke about like Black history or something, which is completely out of place in the interview and makes no sense. But like you can tell like where he's trying to go with this, where he's trying to turn like an interview about video game compositions and make it about race, which doesn't make any sense. But that's the SJW agenda for you. It's Toby Fox trying to put SJW topics where they don't belong. And I've heard stories that he's been doing this like for a while now. Like he's given speeches at like indie game devs there, jams there, like talking about like George Floyd and BLM and shit like that. And like I've heard some people talk about it, but I have seen evidence of that myself at this point. Like in this interview, talking about like Live Alive, he mentions out of nowhere like Black history, which I think kind of confirms that angle of things. That my ridiculous conspiracy theory that Toby Fox is like an SJW shill. Yeah, it's true. So yeah, I am very certain of that now. But more interestingly, I think from an actual game enthusiast standpoint, is like what does this mean for Toby Fox's alleged popularity in Japan? And I think upon looking at this interview, seeing like Shimomura, seeing how Shimomura treats him, and seeing how he describes certain things, I am very certain that Toby Fox was pushed by the Japanese game media, who I'm sure more than developers themselves have been infiltrated by these far left cucks, right? Because it doesn't take a lot of talent to be a gaming journal, right? There are probably a lot of Westerners in there. There's probably a lot of people who are educated in America. There's probably a lot of feminists. Like journalism is one of those industries where we've seen SJWs ruin gaming the most, right? Because good games are always going to exist, but because gaming journalism is such a low bar of entry, because like, all of these people are just plain useless and have no real skills, like this is a field that a lot of them tend to gravitate towards rather than actually make games. And that's why like in 2008, like we got all those like Resident Evil 5's racist articles, and we got like all these articles shilling for Mass Effect, and like all this shit like praising Gone Home, and that's everything that was before Gamergate, by the way. So gaming journalism was corrupted way before actual game development studios were, right, in the West, right? Again, like they were having problems with progressive values and like a bias like by the mid 2000s, but like it didn't explode until like relatively recently, right? And it seems like we're in the early stages of that process now from the Japanese side of things, in which it feels like they're very it's the gaming journalists who are pushing Fox as this major force in indie game development, as this like auteur from America who's like highly skilled and like highly well developed, like this incredible composer who put out one of the most popular games of all time, Undertale. But when you actually take a peek behind the curtain, when you actually see how Shimamura treats him, when she describes like her relationship with Fox, like, oh, I met him once at one of my concerts, right? I was told that he was there and that he was inspired by me. And we had like a brief conversation, and now like we have this Famitsu arranged interview between us. Like you get this impression that they don't have a relationship at all. And that I think extends to essentially everyone in Japan that Toby Fox is interacting with, is that like when he's meeting these developers, when he's like getting on board with these companies, like it's because he's being shilled by the gaming press. Because Shimamura describes this, where she's talking about like for a good while there, like everywhere she went, like people were trying to talk to her about Undertale and Megalovania, and she didn't have any idea what it was. And she even confirms at the end of the interview that she never even played Undertale, which I think is which of course isn't weird, because like, you know, game composers don't play games typically, I imagine. Like you don't have to like be way into games to be like, you know, to do good work on video game development, right? But like the way this interview was structured, it was just bizarre to me, because it was supposed to be a celebration of like Live Alive's re-release, right? Like it really should have been like a, you know, Toby Fox asking Shimamura like, you know, questions about the compositions and like about the games and stuff like that. His relationship with Live Alive. Again, like for the record, Toby Fox lifted a lot of ideas from Undertale from Live Alive in particular. So I was kind of interested in seeing what he had to say about it. But the interview goes in this direction where the interviewer from Famitsu asks Toby Fox, like, what do you love about Live Alive? And I'm not kidding. Like Toby Fox like gives a very brief like summation. Like it's like 2 or 3 sentences, like maybe 3 or 4. Like he gives a brief summation over what he thinks about Live Alive, and then like he immediately tries and spins it into being about Undertale, right? He immediately starts talking about like Deltarune and his projects and stuff like that. And to me, I think this is another example of just what a big narcissist he is, because I keep seeing examples of like how he tends to humble brag about like his own success, his own games and stuff like that. It really does come off as if the primary reason he's doing this, the reason he's like meeting with people like Shiramura, the reason he met a toy, the reason he met Sakurai, the reason he's going through this process is like to validate his own ego, that like he's some great game developer, right? Like on par with like the all-time best, right? It's weird to me that I've never seen a creator like be asked a very specific question about another game, in this case Live Alive, and then like spin it off and start talking about their own work. You know, like to me it just feels like it's obnoxious as fuck. It's rude, but second of all, like it's arrogant and condescending and just like what the fuck, Toby? What were you thinking? It was very very eye opening to me as to how he goes about these things. I'm curious what the remainder what other interviews from him are like, because I imagine it's like kind of the same thing. I have seen this behavior before from him, in which he claims to have like these deep connections with Japanese game developers, but like it's just like a passing association at best. And then we can confirm that now with Shimamura, that like they've only met twice. So I'm curious. I'm curious just how long this is going to go on. How long until like the Japanese get sick of Toby Fox's shit? Because you know, it's been 7 years since Undertale's release. Deltarune isn't all that popular. It's not successful. Like it feels like the only time anyone ever brings up Toby Fox in 2022 is due to his association with another with another developer or another creator. And in cases like Y2K, you know, where Toby Fox composed a song for a game that completely bombed and became a joke, like he tries to disassociate himself from it. Like I've been meaning to talk about that for a while, about the Y2K shit, but yeah, Fox like was involved in the project. It was supposed to be the next big indie game darling, but when like it completely failed, when like it became a joke, when the developer when the developer revealed himself to be like one of those pseudo intellectual, like, oh man, gamers don't appreciate art, man, like that kind of person. Yeah, like the game just became a kind of a joke. I think that's a big reason why Fox doesn't allow himself to be shown on TV, by the way, to be shown like live interviews, which I've talked about at length. This was a written interview that was not recorded. Fox and oh yes, that is another point. It wasn't even done live. They were not face to face. Like Shimamura comments that like, oh yeah, he's a dog, meaning that it was a video call, and Fox was using that like little dog avatar he uses. Like he doesn't appear in person for anything. And I've legit been hearing conspiracy theories, and I've legit like starting to buy into this myself a little bit, like just a little bit, considering like all these situations. Is Toby Fox even a real person? Because you don't see him at all. Like he doesn't get his photos taken. He's not in videos. He looks completely different in like the very few photos you do see of him online, right? Like it's bizarre. It's inexplicable. It's like, wow, is this guy even for real? And to me, I think that speaks volumes. Well, okay, I'm not sure. I'm not gonna like hedge my bets on that. Like Toby Fox isn't a real person. He's like some deep far left like cabal of developers trying to infiltrate the Japanese gaming industry. I'm not gonna say that. But what I am gonna say is that like Toby Fox clearly cannot hold himself in a conversation or a real interview. Otherwise, there would be more of them. And if he did show up on an interview, it would turn out like James Rolfe or Adam Sessler, where this guy who is a complete fraud, the entire image that's been built up in the eyes of his fans would like collapse immediately. Because you would realize, seeing this stuff live, seeing him in motion, seeing how he acts, seeing how people treat him, right? The entire narrative that he's some like beloved game arteur, like some genius, it would all fall apart because of the way he brags about himself, because of the way other people treat him, because of the kind of questions he gets asked, because of like his cherry picked like depictions of his own life that he posts to Twitter, where he pretends that like he's way more happy and he's way more successful and popular than he really is. It's one of those things where I'm just like, how much longer can he realistically keep this up? Like, really, I don't know. But I think like he's going to get overshadowed by like Ed Sheeran in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I really do. Like most people, like he's not even the most popular guest musician on the project, right? And this was supposed to be like his big break, his big like making him relevant. Like, oh man, look at me, I'm working on Pokemon. So is Ed Sheeran. And like nobody's going out and saying that like, oh man, Ed Sheeran, he's the best. He's the best musician Pokemon has ever had. Nobody's going to say that, like nobody's going to say that. And he's like infinitely more successful than Toby Fox ever will be. He gets way more pussy. He has way more like, I'm sure he has way more. Way more. I don't know anything about Ed Sheeran. I said that. I'm just like, am I even sure he's straight? I actually don't know anything about him. I'm sure he has way more tracks out. I'm sure like he's going to be popular for a long time. He was in Game of Thrones. Like that was a big thing back in the day. That's like the equivalent of like Toby Fox appearing in Pokemon. Like Ed Sheeran is bigger than you. You cannot compete with Ed Sheeran, Toby. Like, again, I think we're going to see more of these situations, right? And we have been seeing this situation, this thing with Toby Fox's appearances in like unrelated media. Like, oh, he's in Taiko. Who cares? Like nobody plays Taiko. Oh, he's composing Little Town Hero. Nobody played Little Town Hero. Oh, he's in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Nobody liked the track. Nobody talks about it. Oh, but he's doing the general town theme, the general route theme, and in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I'm straight up boycotting the game because of it. Like, I would at least buy it if like that wasn't the case. But like seeing them try to like paint that as like some big selling point, nah. I'm passing on that. I'm skipping Scarlet and Violet. The first Pokemon generation I'm skipping ever because I just hate Toby Fox that much. That's how much I dislike you, Toby. Right? I wouldn't skip Scarlet and Violet for Ed Sheeran. Like I'm not skipping Scarlet and Violet for that. But I do have a problem with Toby Fox and like his attempts at like trying to pass himself off as like some successful composer, right? He's not. He's never going to be beloved. He's never going to have like legions of fans like who will, follow him everywhere. He couldn't even get them to go along with like his successor to Undertale, right? Deltarune has been a complete disaster, and he did everything in his power to try and like get it talked about, to keep it relevant, to make sure people kept playing it, right? Like the game is free to play. Like I think that tells you all there is to know about like the state of Toby Fox and like the state of Deltarune, is that like the game is completely free, and yet the vast majority of the audience has no interest in it. And I think like by the time the game concludes, and by the time he has to work on a new project, or as I imagine, will never work on a new project at all, like the fan base will have grown out of it. And I think that's a big thing, like in 2022, is that like the 10-year-olds who like loved Undertale back when it first came out, like because of the memes, because of like the YouTube shilling, because of like the Homestuck community, like the people who were legit fans of like Fox's work on Homestuck, and like who played the Halloween hack and things like that. Like those guys are going to be in like their 20s and mid 20s soon. They're going to be like getting out of college, getting into college, or they're going to be getting into college, and they're going to be thinking about their futures and careers. Like those of them that aren't complete degenerates, like the So Sorry guy, which by the way, I need to talk about, considering that that's also a important topic in the Fox thing, the Fox saga. But like these guys, the core audience are a lot older now. Like they have other interests. They have other things they're getting into. I'm sure they're watching more anime. I'm sure they're watching more manga. I'm sure a lot of them are playing games. And if any of them go back to Undertale, which I imagine 100% of them will not, like those who do, the very few that do for like, YouTube coverage or doing nostalgia videos or something, like a lot of them are going to come away saying that like, this game really is not that good. Like I do think we are eventually going to get that like that moment, that epiphany where like people like look back on this game and kind of realize that like, oh man, this is really fucking terrible. I liked this, like really. Again, I feel like there's a big push to like kind of promote bad games in like the gaming sphere on the internet, right? Like when I reviewed Psychonauts 2, I was like surprised at the amount of people that were giving it like glowing reviews. People like Nitro Rad and people in the sphere. Like the reason they were giving the game positive reviews was because like, ooh, the legacy of the original and how we never thought we would get a sequel. Like they weren't thinking about the game critically at all, right? They weren't thinking about like the level design, the pacing, the story. Like I ravaged that game. I fucking despised it. And like even today, like, well, first of all, I barely remember playing it, but like I actually went back and watched my video on it where I talked about like all the things I hated about it. And like it was a trip. Like it all came flowing back to me, like that frustration of just playing Psychonauts 2 and just realizing this game was not only terrible, but like honestly impacted my positive impressions of the original in a lot of ways. I think this might be the same deal where like people will just hype up Undertale so much that when like younger players get into it or like try to play it or like try to understand like the appeal, like they're just going to get frustrated, realize it's garbage, and then go back to Minecraft. Right. And I think that's like the takeaway here is that like no matter how big Undertale is, no matter how much money Toby Fox made, he's not going to be as big as Notch. Like he's not going to have the same kind of legacy as like the Shovel Knight guys or Team Cherry or like any of these other indie games that I love. Like Sifu's coming out next month. Like that's probably one of the biggest games I'm looking forward to like this holiday season, Sifu. I don't see that happening for Undertale ever. Like Undertale was always all hype and no substance. And I think like once the general public kind of like starts to accept that, once like the audience grows up a little and like reflects and like, maybe a global economic collapse like makes them reevaluate what's really important. Like maybe we'll have like this epiphany where like, I think the game will just become obscure. I think that's the problem, is that like right now people, you either don't know what Undertale is or you think it's like the best thing ever, right? People who like have played Undertale and like know it's shit, people like me, we're very uncommon, I think. You have to be like a fan of like niche JRPGs. You have to like know what Toby Fox is doing. You have to like be able to read between the lines when it comes to these interviews and things like that. There's so much stuff you have to like know about Undertale that for a normal person who was not in like my position in 2015, you probably wouldn't have even known it existed. All right. And now, even now, going into like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, like not a lot of people are talking about Toby Fox. Like I've gone on VP. People are like making fun of Wiglet. People are making fun of like the cross dressing and like some of the character designs. Typical things that people talk about when it comes to a new Pokemon release. Nobody is talking about Toby Fox, and I think that's a very, very strong indication just how irrelevant he actually is.